I am a stranger as well, a temporary visitor to these video game worlds. As for this game though, I will always have a permanent remembrance of the time I spent in it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'll be playing for at least the next 3 years. Thank you, Rift, for giving me content to work towards. True chaos is only attained at floor 99,999 after all. But if I waited until I achieved that to do my look back, I think my perception of the game would be very different. So let's mark today as my ascension to a final boss. The story is irrelevant. Well, it's not, but it's very short depending if you play the DLC or not. That's the interesting but also negative part. The season pass for this game actually completes the game as a whole, and not just in its functions, but also closes the story. It does suck if you want to see the true end of Jack's journey, as you'll be compelled to purchase the deluxe version of the game, but it goes for quite cheap during sales for around $10 Canadian, so it's not egregious. The story in its whole is very straightforward, as is Jack's personality. Basically, a Lufenian bad, and the world keeps looping due to the power of crystals, so that a perfect future can be created. Jack is an agent of the Lufenian Nil, who eventually has enough of playing NG+, and it manages to break the cycle. Thanks to Astos and the other strangers, Jack is able to literally become chaos, an unpredictable and uncontrollable power that can overwhelm pretty much anything. The story is presented in very short cutscenes, with the more subtle lore coming from the archive missives you pick up during missions. I never played Final Fantasy I, so I didn't get the references or locations that you can visit in Jack's journey, but if they ever do remaster FF1, I sure will play it just so I can see and fight Jack as the final boss. Quite like the story, there's not much to say about the characters. Jack's a one-dimensional, chaos-pursuing warrior of light that also has amnesia. It was pretty cool to get glimpses into some of his past actions in his other loops, and it makes sense that his psyche has been reset after every world reset, which makes him pretty apathetic and disassociative as a person. As for the other strangers, they don't really have too much outstanding lore to them. They don't have the same power of crystals that Jack has, but all of them besides Neon are from the same hometown as Jack. Also, I just love how they all wear modern day clothing despite every other piece of armor in the game being fantasy-like. Like, I know Lufenian tech is basically sci-fi, as seen in the last DLC missions, so I just find it funny that they didn't bother equipping the strangers with actual endgame gear. I mean, we could have created the perfect future on Loop 1, but instead they gave us t-shirts and sneakers. And now functions. Well, there is quite a lot, as this game is literally all that and gameplay. I want to clarify that I'll be discussing my thoughts on this given the full scope of the game. This includes all weapon types, jobs, and difficulties. The greatest strength of this game has to be its graphics. Okay, the game does have slow-mo mode, and it's not exactly the highest fidelity game, but it's got enough unique style to keep me interested, with the brutal soul burst animations for each enemy and boss type. Let's start with the weapons. There are 10 types, and each with their own unique animations and combo abilities. It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple, which is nice. Most weapons have 3 to 5 normal attack strings, in which you can then slot a combo ability after each normal attack, which expands your MP. It's quite satisfying, since certain classes can chain different combo abilities and certain jobs can enable great combinations between a selected weapon type and the abilities that are unlocked on its tree. Regarding jobs, there are 35 in total, each with their own skill trees and unlockable combo abilities and command abilities. Jobs also max at level 300 once you get to the end game, so the pursuit for perfection never ends if your goal is to max everything. Each job also comes with 2 sub-classifications in mid-game, which not only empower the equipment's effects, but also grants additives to a job's unique combo ability. Now this sounds complicated, and it becomes really addicting when you have this much customization and freedom in how you want to play. If you think jobs and weapons make you overpowered though, that's because it can. Unfortunately, or unfortunately, the game also throws more challenges your way as well. Dragon trials and chaos variants of enemies and bosses add new layers of attack patterns and hazards that players need to be aware of. A negative I do want to express is that the DLC doesn't add any new base enemies, and there's only one new location to explore at the very end of the story. If we were evaluating the scope of new content in the DLC, then there isn't really anything. It's more so new heights in the DLC, such as gear increases, limit breaks, and higher difficulties. In the end, players will more or less be running the same zones, the same missions, and fighting the same enemies, all for the pursuit of creating the ultimate chaos-killing machine. And that's my adventure as a stranger so far. As I said, I'm still going to be playing the Rift because I'll admit, it's a fantastic game to grind while I'm watching anime or getting ready for bed. Don't let the gear systems intimidate you though. It's the only concepts you'll have to learn about to then start charting your route and accomplishing your build. This was also the first game that I decided to stream instead of recording. It was a good test run, and I'm actually quite surprised my PC could handle streaming and recording at the same time without causing an explosion. As for my next project, I will see you either in The Lands Between or in Armored Core 6.